All right, so we're recording now. Thanks, guys, so
Okay.
much for doing this. I really appreciate it. So normally we would have the other participants here, but because this is kind of a special thing and a different time than we normally do this, that's the reason why we don't have the other participants. But let me go ahead and start with Valerie first. So you're kind of a new person to me, but you've actually done XPT before, is that correct?
No, I applied, but back when they weren't doing it for people out of state. So yeah, it was a year where they had too many out of state. So I'm familiar with XPT. I've been to it, but this is my first XPT to participate in.
Gotcha. And you used to live in Atlanta for a while?
No, I would come down and work in Atlanta sometimes, but I lived near Asheville in North Carolina before.
Okay. So how I found about you was that so anytime XPT comes up, and I just started, I took over XPT about 2 years ago. And so I start looking around for other people I might not know and try to get some new blood into XPT. And I happened to see a drawing that you did for Bo Brown.
I do his Christmas cards every year.
Okay. And I was like, I don't know what it was about the drawing, but there was something about the drawing that I was like, I bet she does puppetry. I don't know what it was. And so I just kind of clicked over to your profile, and then I happened to see a picture that you had probably some shadow puppetry or something going on. So I was like, okay, great. I need to talk with her and see if she's interested or not. So how did you know Bo Brown, and how that relationship start?
Bo Brown and I have known each other for a long time, but we met, I think we met in, I forget the year, but it was when the Puppeteers of America Festival was in like Wilmington, North Carolina. My band that I was in, called Hell Blinky, we played the Puppet Slam. And it was the first time that me and my partner at the time, Madison J. Cripps, had ever like seen the greater puppetry network. And we saw Bo Brown and Chris Brown, not related, from across the room. And we were like, those guys are either complete assholes or they're going to be our new best friends. And it was both. No, Bo is fantastic. And Bo has been like a solid buddy and supporter of mine and friend for, it's got to be like, it's over 10 years now, because since wow, we're all old and
that's true. Time keeps on ticking away. Yeah, it's so interesting because even seeing the photos with the shadow puppetries and stuff like that, and kind of looking around your profile, I had that feeling that you were quote unquote an artist that used puppetry to get to an ends to a means that you had, versus someone who was specifically a puppeteer all the times. Is that true? And was it through the meeting with the Browns that you kind of brought puppetry into what you were doing?
No, I've been doing puppet stuff all my life, but I'm definitely, like you said, I'm interdisciplinary not to a fault, but I am extremely interdisciplinary. My degree is in illustration. I was in a band performing for like 10 years and touring. And then I moved to Europe for a
freezing up a bit.
Puppetry program, but mostly to work in. Oh, are we breaking up?
You were, but you're getting better again.
That's okay. I'm recording on my end too, so I can send you audio.
Okay.
But so yeah, I like I love puppet shows. I love silly, playful, and building worlds, but my heart and my art form falls in like realism that demands puppetry to make magic. Is this like something that becomes alive because of puppetry? I actually was just learning, I just had this conversation yesterday, but in Czech, and I'm not a strong Czech speaker, but I learned to say like, it's not just puppets, it's puppetry and like the art form that gets me very excited. but I also love puppets, and I used to build like hand and rod stuff and just whatever I could. I enjoy that skill as well. But
Well, me being a dumb American, I think the reason why I thought you were in Russia was because you kept on talking about Czech. So my idea is that only people who speak Czech are in Russia. So obviously you're not in Russia. So where are you exactly? Where do you live
yeah,
now?
they Czech Republic is in Central Europe. It's bordered by Germany, Austria, Poland, Slovakia, of course. And it was occupied by Russia for a really long time. They are not happy about that, and it's a weird not weird. As like the cultural memory here is very interesting because it is a cultural memory that I don't have. So the way that they feel about Russia is it's very complicated. And there are lots of Russians here, Russian refugees, and Ukrainian refugees. And but yeah, I've worked in Russia before. I had a residency there in 2019. So I have been to Russia, but I love the Czech Republic, and I don't read Cyrillic very well. So Czech is different. They're both Slavic languages, but different cultures, different people.
And what country are you in now?
Czech Republic.
Oh, it's Czech Republic. I didn't know that was an actual country itself.
It's a beautiful. It's one of the centers of puppetry. There's a UNESCO like intangible cultural heritage here for puppetry. I think the center of Unima was based here for a while as well, in Prague.
Gotcha.
But yes, it is the size roughly of South Carolina. So
Okay.
it's a little country, but I love it very much.
So that's kind of the reason why I wanted to bring you and Tim together. I'm going to switch over to Tim a little bit here and kind of bridge everything together here. Tim, obviously, I've known you for years with Push Push Theater in Atlanta, Georgia. Can you take me back a little bit to your background? I know that you did stuff as an actor with 7 Stages before starting Push Push. Can you take me back to that time period and how Push Push began?
Well, I was associate director and kind of worked in the backspace a lot, but then we did some shows in the front space and it expanded. But we started a weekly actor session where actors could come in and work on things that they probably wouldn't get cast for in the commercial arena. So we did some oddball productions and we met and we kept it to being just workshops so that people weren't thinking about trying to turn in a performance. And then we went back and forth, and every now and again we would actually produce something separate from the workshop that maybe grew out of that. And I think that culminated with Joe and Betty. And at that point, there wasn't room for us in any of the stages, 7 stages. So they helped us relocate to the Highland Ballroom, and Push Push was started out of that production. That was 27 years ago, I guess. So I've continued that track of doing workshop productions. And so we started in 1997, and in 2001, before the 9/11, we started this international program because we were invited to participate with other theaters, and the audience really liked it and said, why don't you keep going? And so we did a 3-year exploratory thing. And now 20 some years later, we've got active partnerships in about 13 countries, and we continue to do that kind of work. We just had a group from London come in and do a show about the Ukrainian invasion of Russia. And we did the Hamburg. There's a group from Hamburg talking about modern Black life in Germany. And then we went over, one of the playwrights at Push Push and I went over and spent a month in Berlin last month. We just got back last week, doing 2 shows. And working on 3 new spaces that they had. So we try to keep that international thing active, and 2 of our actors are going back to Hamburg now to be in the premiere of this Black Lives show that they're doing there before it comes back here to Spelman and Morehouse.
Gotcha. And I found Push Push Theater because it was by luck and chance. I was working at a company that was based off Zonalite, which is where I believe your first space was after the Highland.
Second space, yeah. First space after Highland.
Yeah. And then you moved over to Decatur area. And then there was a moment where you guys did not have a space and you kind of worked remotely, kind of doing your own thing, right?
Yeah, what happened was they upped the rent at the Decatur space about 4 times, and we were just getting by. I mean, they said there's good news and bad news. One, you're in the black and you're the only theater in town that's in the black right now. The bad news is that nothing's getting better. So you're going to spend a lot more time just trying to keep your head above water. And then they upped the rent, and we were already kind of feeling, we had a 9-hour show we were doing in LA. So we knew we were going to be out of the space a lot, and we were working more and more in Europe. So we decided to go ahead and look for a space that really suited our needs. And we spent 5 years touring while we were looking for the space. During that time, we were working out of the goat farm. So we still had, performances here in Atlanta, and we did some stuff at 7 Stages, etc. But then we found our what we call our forever home now in College Park, with the whole campus and affordable artist housing and everything else that we were really looking for. So it's been 4 years of development through COVID, but we're getting there.
Yeah, was it a difficult decision to go back to a physical location? Did it suit Push your agenda more to just kind of be free floating? And
there's advantages to both. Here's the problem, is that we just kept getting further and further out, and the productions here kept getting more and more commercial. And in order to do a show inside the perimeter, we felt like it had to be a kind of specialty political show or a big musical. There weren't a lot of options. There certainly weren't any options for doing weird stuff, and I say weird stuff. I don't know why I even say that, but people understand. To try to do a show that we felt was worthy, or that some artist was really wanting to do, was just not a reality with the kind of rents that you had in the city. So we felt like we had to do something. We also felt like all of our artists were moving further and further away. And housing now is $1,800 a month for the minimum. And so we really felt like we had to do something. And we started working. The first thing we did was started to work with the Kensington Affordable Housing Project, because we thought that might be a way to house artists in Decatur. But then we found the place in College Park, which actually brought the housing prices for actors and artists, all artists, down to about half. And as sure as luck would have it, as soon as we got that thing rolling for about 3 years, then the property in Avondale Estates, Kensington, has called us back and wants us to program their housing up there. So at this point, I think we're going to be able to get, literally hundreds of artists housing that's affordable and really nice. I think these apartments are great. And they're close in, and so it's just been great for us. And the artist studios are about half price, and performance venues, are no cost to low cost. So all of those things makes having a space worthwhile. Though there are days that I wake up and think, what in the hell am I doing?
Right.
So much easier when you didn't own a place, or to deal with.
Let me switch real quickly over to puppetry. So even though Push Push in the past had flirted with puppetry here and there, it wasn't really something Push Push was necessarily known for. So how or why this particular project that you brought to XPT this year, that you decided that this would be a good avenue for you to delve into puppetry, because I believe this might be your first time directing puppetry. I could be wrong about that.
Yeah.
And how has it been so far working with a puppet? You also have an actor as well, a live actor.
Yeah. Yeah, and Tim Sweeney, that's puppeteering for this, he's worked at Push Push on several shows, and we've known him for a long time, and he's kind of a creative multidisciplinarianist. So that's been fun to work with him. I'm really enjoying it. I've always been a fan of puppetry arts, and I've seen a lot, especially now in Europe. I've seen, some stuff that's really amazing too, and so I like the idea of it. But what happened was, all the shows at Push Push come because some artist says, "Hey, can we work on this project?" And then it develops from one thing to another. And in this case, there was a producer that we'd worked with for years at Seven Stages, and they got involved in the Ukrainian playwrights global playwright reading project. And out of that, we really fell in love with this script, Survivor Syndrome. And it just happened to be that the guy who wrote it works at the Center for Puppetry Arts in Lviv. So we thought, wow, this is great. And he was up for us doing it. And I thought, okay, so here's a great opportunity. And XPT is one of my favorite things in Atlanta. This annually, I think it's always produces something that I just love. So getting involved with it for the first time this time was kind of a cool thing.
Awesome. Valerie, I want to come back to you. But before I do, I just want to make sure that you guys know, considering that we're so insulated with the three of us here, feel free to ask questions amongst each other. Don't just rely on me. You guys can ask questions of each other as well. It's totally fine.
I don't talk to Valerie, and she knows why. No, you're another Valerie. All right.
Valerie, so can you tell me a little bit about the puppetry scene in Czech Republic?
Lots of striped shirts. They're wonderful. I'm extremely lucky. I'm very lucky that my best friend here, and in general, we met at a puppet festival in Japan 5 years ago. And but he was there on tour with Tři Mušketeři, which is the Three Musketeers show that they do at this puppet theater here called Divadlo Alpha. And they are amazing, world-renowned. They've toured everywhere. But because of that, I've been sort of plugged into their network. So it's incredibly vibrant. There's, again, this country is the size of South Carolina, and there are just puppet festivals constantly. Last November, I was at a festival in Prague, only to find out that we had accidentally gone to the other puppet festival that was going on in Prague, and there were two overlapping. And when I was looking for apartments in this city, in Plzeň, where I live, I couldn't find whether or not it was furnished. It just wasn't a listing, but I could find where my closest theater was. It's like they understand the different parts of town. The theater culture here is amazing, and a large part of it is puppetry culture. There's I'm not sure how I would describe Spijbel and Horvinek, but they're these two puppets. They're kind of like maybe Howdy Doody era, like fundamental Czech puppetry, mostly for children, with jokes in there for it, like puns and things for adults. But their creator, Josef Skupau, is from Pilsen as well. So there's on the main square, there's these big bronze statues of these two puppets sitting on a park bench for people to sit with. It's everywhere around us. The Puppetry Museum is down the block. So it's very vibrant, and like it's like integral to their culture in a way that we don't have we have puppetry that is integral to our culture in America too. I would say, especially through something like Sesame Street, that is so fundamental in so many
Right.
children's childhoods, I guess, in their development.
Yeah.
But here it's like it stays and it's less specific. I've been really impressed. I do have a language barrier issue. So if people speak English, I can talk to them or I can fumble around in my Czech. But yeah, like I went to a amateur puppet festival last year for 5 or 6 days. And I would say very often in Czech, it's like, I have opinions, but I don't have words. And so I will go back this year and I have more words. I can be more politely critical and supportive as well. I have a whole head full of puppet ideas that I have not been able to articulate in words, but yeah, the culture here is absolutely crazy. It's the reason I moved here. My school program fell apart because of the Hungarian government. It's not a very nice one. And I rather than go back to the US, because I had sort of closed up shop, sold my car, rented my house, just left everything. I decided to come here. Part of my school would have sent me to the National Performing Arts School here, but instead I'm just here and I'm surrounded by puppetry regardless. It's a different style than I grew up with. Like my friend is a marionette carver, which is great. It's a skill I'm learning. And anytime he wants to learn how to make hand and rod Muppet style, I know a guy. It's me. But yeah, it's ubiquitous. I can say that word and you guys will understand it. It's everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because maybe I'm putting words into your mouth, but it doesn't seem like puppetry has an age limit in Europe, where here in America, it's very rooted into, like you said, the development of kids and stuff like that. The only one that came close to kind of extending that was when the original Muppets was around the 70s. And it seemed like parents were watching that along with the kids, which I assume is probably much more prevalent in Europe than it is here.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think that problem still exists, or it's still or it's more like my friends. So for money, a lot of times I will teach English. When I had to leave Hungary, I moved here and just started teaching English. And now I'm teaching less and building and doing more theater work and artwork and just whatever. But many people will tell me, possibly because of the language, that I should really make a show to take to schools for little kids. And I say like, oh yes, maybe. But that's not actually where my work tends to be. So there is that association, but I would compare it kind of to like anime or manga in Japan. So like comics and animation that, yes, there's plenty for children, but it extends all the way to adults and different genres. Puppetry is sort of the same here. There's tons of puppet stuff for kids and like iconic children's puppetry characters, but then you can go to the theater and it happens to be puppetry theater for adults. And there's less of it's less novel. It's not we're going to a puppet show for adults. It's less of an issue. It's just another form, another genre.
Gotcha. Let me go back to Tim here as we're starting to talk about money. So obviously most artists in America have always heard about the fact that in Europe, there's more funding for artists. Now, Tim, obviously you're still here in Atlanta working out of, but you have these relationships with other countries. How does that work out with getting funding? Is it kind of a relationship? Part of it's coming from Europe, part of it's coming from Atlanta. How's that working out?
It differs on everything. We do project by project, so we don't fund the program, the Portal Exchange program. We just fund projects. So sometimes we do get help from another government, or that one time I did 2 years, I toured in Southeast Europe with Faust, and that was sponsored by the US State Department, surprisingly, just part of their cultural initiative. So we get some things like that that help on the American side and help on the European or Chinese, or, you know, like we had a thing with Shanghai and they put up half the money and brought the people over and did a lot of legwork on that. So it just differs. And when I was in Berlin this last time, I did a kind of presentation, part of a production that was based on the economy of the free scene or the independent scene here and there. And we had a lot of people from Iran, from Spain, from Portugal, different places, as well as the Germans and the Americans. And it was really interesting to talk about the two different things. And I got back to the same notion that I feel all the time, which is, in Atlanta, at least, we don't know the difference between art and entertainment. Not that they don't blend a lot, but I think there are artists that have a calling to do something more than just try to sell tickets or please the audience. And they, what Valerie was saying about, somebody saying, why don't you do this thing for high schools or kids or something like that? And if that's not her calling, then it's weird to go ahead and say, well, that's what I'm going to do now. And I feel like in America, we just accept it as being, hey, if you want to work as an actor, you can draw the line at porn, but other than that, everything's game. And if you go at audition and find yourself in a really shitty sitcom, so be it. And then start to celebrate that because you got work. And Push was started on the idea of going, why should I celebrate being involved in a production that I don't really believe in or feel a drawn to or anything like that? So that's the biggest thing I see. And people always say, America, you don't support your culture. And I'm going, yeah, we supported crazy. Marvel movies are everywhere. McDonald's, there's 50 different McDonald's in Berlin alone, and our culture is everywhere. It's just not our best culture.
So with your relationships with people overseas, have you noticed that that idea weakening, that there is support from the government to artists to kind of create their own art? Like, is that a changing scene? Is that no longer really viable as much as it was back when?
Say that again. I'm
Sure. Sure. So it seemed like, especially back in the 90s, it seemed like if you wanted to make money as an artist purely by living off of your art,
right,
you would want to go to Europe. That was kind of the safe bet. I'm not necessarily talking about per se actors or puppeteers right now, but like I know specifically, like I heard about a lot of jazz artists, a lot of blues artists who would go to Europe and make a lot more money, actually make and be able to support themselves over in Europe. But since that time, do you feel that is still true, or do you think that has changed?
Well, I mean, I still have a lot of friends, in Prague and Berlin and different places that moved over there, and they've been there now for a long time. And then some of them aren't still there. And I never can tell whether it's them particularly. I think it's tough. I mean, I think it's just tough. I mean, there are various reasons for it, whether you, like I say, speak the language or are a citizen there, whether you're eligible for certain things. That's one aspect of it. And then I continue to learn about what they desire still in Americans that I'm drawn to, and going, okay, so there are advantages, even though I think the support for the artist is really good over there. It's also limited in certain ways. And so there's a give and take. I'm really interested in the exchange between the two. I don't know that somebody's saying, hey, I'm going to pack up and move to Berlin right now, which is what I know a lot better, would do better in Berlin than they would here in America at this point. If they're really entrepreneurial and want to go ahead and start something, they probably would have a much better time doing it here. Though I have a lot of friends that are Americans that live there and that's all they do is their art. So,
Yeah.
and one thing that's great is that they're not ever expected to do entertainment. You know, they're not expected to just go out and take a job because it's a job. And my partner that I've been working with for about 15 years now, she's, you know, she always says, you know, like Shelby will ask her, why don't you, you know, get a job when she's needing some money, you know, go wait tables and stuff, because waiting tables is another job. It'd be like asking an actor in Atlanta, why don't you go over to Delta and fly some planes for a while, you know, and make ends meet. Because I'm not a pilot. I mean, that's a profession, and arts are a profession, and waiting tables over there is a profession. So
that's really interesting because I've always thought as my process in creating and stuff like that, that has always been a hobby. That's always the way I felt like I needed to look at it. That way I have a job, a 9-to-5 job, but I have the freedom in the evenings to practice what I want to do. Valerie, can you speak on this now, since you're living it, you're in it?
Yeah, it's actually very interesting to hear what Tim said about like, no, that's another job, is because I found myself having to like try, and unsuccessfully so far, but try to sort of unlearn a lot of habits I developed in America for financial stability, or like got to get that sweet healthcare. And so it's interesting because now I'm here, but I'm obsessed with I have a bunch of immigration chaos right now where it's like you must make a certain amount of money and then prove it to the government for whatever, for resident permit. But I kind of had that weird number in my head anyway of like, well, I have to make enough money to be okay. And also I moved here in a very chaotic time. Like I moved here during I moved to Europe in pre-vaccine COVID, and December 2020, not a great time to do that. And then everything kind of fell apart as vaccines were coming out, but I wasn't a Hungarian citizen, so I was like lower on the list, and just trying to navigate that. I finally got here, and then everything was like, it felt like free fall. So I said yes to every job I could teaching English, because it's something that I don't mind. I enjoy it with kids and adults also, but that's not why I'm here. And but it's a very marketable skill, and I'm very good at it, and I'm a native speaker. So I do more and more of that. But the last year, I realized I did too much, and I wasn't making art or painting or doing anything. So this year I've done less, and now I'm paying an immigration hell to fix it. But moving forward, I'm trying to unlearn that, oh my God, I have to make sure that I pay rent. Like my friends here seem a bit more, it'll be fine. And that seems very irresponsible to me, but it's not. They are all fine. It's just this mentality of not making sure that all of your bills are paid in advance and knowing everything. Like, yeah, pay your bills, but also be a puppeteer, make your art. And that's why you're here. So I am in the transition of doing more of that. And this XPT has been kind of beneficial. One of the big problems for me is that all of my physical work is in America. And I moved here without it, because I moved to go to a 2-year master program, and I was going to make all of this new stuff. So now I feel like I'm here saying, oh, I'm an artist, please believe me. Here's something I drew, here's a website. But once I have something physical and I can perform in front of people and connect to them, I think I hope a lot of doors will open, because everyone seems very fond of me because I am a blue-haired American and they enjoy that. But it's as I start to show like, oh no, and this is my work and this is my skill set, I realized that, oh yeah, I should just be doing this. I just need to figure out how in a city that doesn't speak much English. If I was in Prague, there's more English, but in Pilsen, there's less, but it's cheaper and has more puppet theaters here. So I enjoy it.
Gotcha. And I want to talk more about your piece, but first, do you mind talking about the troubles you've been going through with immigration and where you're at that moment?
Yeah, the troubles. I mean, I can't basically on Wednesday, I have an appointment at MVEB, which is like the Ministry of the Interior here. And I'll just give them a ton of documents. Sometimes when things are incredibly bureaucratic, like to a troubling degree, people will say that it's Kafkaesque. I'm sure we've said it in America, like it's very Kafkian. Kafka was writing about the Czech Republic. Like, this is where he was. And this is the bureaucracy. When people say like, oh, you're in like a Kafkian universe, I say, no, Kafka and I are from the same universe. And it changed. So it's very Kafkaesque. I can't speak anymore. Kafkian.
Yes.
And it really is, it's just a matter of, there's so many documents that the website says one thing, the government says something else. Your fate is really just in the hands of the person you go and speak to, and everything's a little bit different. And the Czechs seem to understand that this is just how it is. But for me, it's very destabilizing every time. Like, I have a text from my immigration agent, who is a person I hired to help me, that says from February, that says, oh, I'm sorry, you didn't make enough money to stay. And that's nonsense. It's utterly nonsense. And it's also not true. I was able to prove all of these other things, but the amount of papers I have to find, I have been pretty lucky. Every government office I go to has been very nice to me as I speak my garbage language at them. They're very patient. So I think it'll work out. And again, my friends here, my community has done incredible things to try to help me stay. So I'm very lucky. If I was alone, that it would be much, much harder, and I would not, may not be successful. But I think it will be okay. We say "Držím palce," which is I'm holding my thumbs. It's like crossing your fingers. And so I do that a lot. But this week, yes, "Držím palce." This week, I won't have a decision, but I will give them all of these documents, and my to-do list from them is full. It's done. Whether they give me another list in a couple weeks, I don't know. But sometime in May, they should make their decision. There's like some tax documents that don't exist until the start of May. So,
well, excuse my ignorance here. So the reason why how much money you're making is so important is because they want to make sure that you are of value to this. You're bringing some kind of value to the country, and that's the reason why they're letting.
Yeah, it's kind of, that's sort of the loose version. I am here, partly the only visa I could get that would allow me to cross the border during COVID was a business a visa for the purpose of business. And so I have something called the Živnostenský list, which is like, it's like your free trade license. Basically, I am an independent contractor. It's my I-9 with a fancy name. And when you have that, you must make a certain amount of money to prove that you're not like what's a phrase, like on the dole. Like, I have national health care. They want to make sure that I'm not just a random person who showed up in this country and is now on national health care, but not actually participating in the economy. Yeah. But then there's like extra things that are weird because I'm a foreigner, not from the EU. There are some tax advantages that I should be able to take. But then when I apply for a residence permit, I can't take those tax advantages because it'll say that I didn't make enough money. And it's just again, one department doesn't talk very well to the other department, and their computers are running what looks like MS-DOS. And yeah, it's but I mean, the American computers do that too. So
Yeah, I mean, the American
yeah,
government is very much on the same system.
yeah, you kind of have to like prove that you are a functioning member of society, but their numbers are a little bit crazy. Like their numbers are based on Prague rents, but I don't live in Prague. My rent is half of what it would be in Prague. So I was able to prove that because they wanted more paper. Just so much paper. There's my passport. So much paper.
Well, let's move over to your piece for XPT this year. Sure. Where did the idea come from, and where are you at right now in the process?
I am actually almost done, which is terrifying to say. So I have actually had this idea in my head for a really long time, or the general idea for this piece, like as a theater piece, which is a telephone box for one person. But obviously that can't travel to the US right now. Yeah, I wrote in my proposal that I've sort of growing up in like Catholicism, but also being really interested in like Buddhism and Shinto when I go to Japan. The telephone booth looks to me like a small shrine, especially the ones that are kind of dome shaped, like the Virgin of Guadalupe shrines. And you make your little offering. And when you do, you have the power to call anyone in the world for a short amount of time. And that is just a very special, it's a special public service. And now they're falling apart and in disarray, and they're going away. Like all of the ones in the Czech Republic are gone. They were here 4 years ago when I started coming here, but they're gone now. And so, and then discussing with my friend Jose, who helped me with the story of this film. Again, it's like you said, we lost him. But it's how basically Jose asked the question, which broke my brain open and is exactly the right question. What does the telephone want? Like, what does it want? Like, it's not so much this is what they're for, this is their purpose, but its purpose is to connect people. Its purpose is to connect to people, and that's what it wants. And how do we show that it wants something? How does it change how does it adapt? There's a Japanese concept of tools and like utilitarian objects that gain sentience after 100 years of being used. And I also love, like, that's another puppet show in my brain that I've loved, just that small idea. I never developed it. But this is kind of that thing, like it has lived its life and functioned, and now it has sentience, and it realizes that it is no longer serving its purpose, but it's an object. It's bolted to a wall. What is it going to do?
Yeah.
And so so we see in the film, we see there's 3 scenes of development, I guess, where people don't interact with the phone, but the phone like watches them and sees and basically tries to figure out, what is it that they need? What can I give them? What will bring them over? And we start with someone who is experiencing homelessness, and basically they find shelter. So he's just the shelter person. I don't know how to call them in the credits, but they find shelter in the phone booth during a rainstorm, which when we shot happened to be a hailstorm. So that was nice. It shows up on camera, and I learned the word for hail.
Yeah.
Kropia. And the phone starts to change its buttons. So we can't really change our shape, but it pops off its buttons and it replaces them with these icons, which are good for me because icons are sort of abstract. Like, it's just a little home, and you can apply to that whatever meaning you want. What is home to you? Is it just shelter? Is it a place? Is it a person? But that is one of our buttons. And then we have two lovers in the middle of the night or as the night is turning into dawn. And then we have a teenager on Instagram, which is that like, I want attention, or not even just attention, but I want to feel seen. I want to be seen. And so the buttons change accordingly. And then at the end, we have our final person. All of the buttons have changed, and this person hears the phone. The phone is ringing throughout the film. And actually, I put it in post-production because my phone is not real. And but also because I didn't want my actors to react to it, because they do not, no one hears it. It's like, it's literally falling on deaf ears.
Right.
And then our final person has headphones on, is listening to music, and the phone cuts through the noise. It has changed itself enough, and it holds something that this person needs, and they hear it, and they pick up the phone. It's no one's there. It's a phone, but they notice the buttons are different. And so as they decide to press a button, and as they press it, the box transforms as much as it can in the time I have, but the box basically changes. It has like a little automata inside it, or tree branches come out, and there's like a heart illuminated inside its keypad. But it's basically, it gives people what they need. And in this case, it seems to be the way that film works. It mostly appears in like memories, or like, it's like, oh, it took me back to some place or some feeling. My hopes for the future with this will be, it's like for people who are physically experiencing the box, it will be like creating an enhanced environment for imagination, memory, connection. My future ideas for this project is like, any random audience member brings their own meaning, their own desire to the phone. They dial the number, which is selecting these symbols, and each symbol will trigger something in the box happening. So we have the first three are in the film, and which is good, because I haven't figured out what all of them are. What does home do? I don't know yet. I know a couple of them solid. I've got it. And a couple others are like, I don't know, sound. It's a phone. So, but yeah, it's an experiment I've wanted to do for a while. And the film, I will admit, when I started, I was like, oh my God. In fact, I think it was you and you and Francis. I forget if we had a phone call or
yeah,
what.
It was a phone call.
Yeah. I was trying to figure out, I'll show the box and how it works with the audience, thinking very much like a documentary of this piece that I am making. And you all were asking, and I was like, it's going to be 2 minutes. Oh, that was a lie. I lied to myself. It is, however, under 10. It's under 8. I'm happy. But I think it was Francis especially was like, and who are the people who use it? And I was like, that's not important. And it wasn't, because my project idea, or my installation is, it needs to be accessible to everyone.
Sure.
But then what you and Francis were saying about the characters and how do they interact with the phone, coupled with my friend Jose asking, what does the phone want and how does it get it? The sort of A to B, those things together were just like, yes, what do these people need that the phone wants to provide but can't until it has undergone these changes? So it worked out pretty well. But I have gone from kind of like, oh, I don't know, document this phone project, to a film that I'm actually I like it. I'm a little scared of it at times, because I don't know, I'm scared of it for some reason. But my friends who I've shown it to, it's like, I will show it to someone and I will hide.
Oh, wow.
It's like watching yourself sing.
Oh, God. Yeah.
I hate it. I hate
Right.
it so much. Or like listening to your own voice. So I'm just like, here's the thing I did. I'm not sure. And I just hide.
Yeah.
But they've been very complimentary, including some words that I don't know yet in Czech, but by their facial expressions.
So you don't really know if they're being complimentary or not.
I
They
have
could be.
a couple Americans who are extremely complimentary.
Right.
I have a friend who wanted to do music for this film, but he just, I told him that my stressful deadline is not his stressful deadline. I was like, this film will be ready and we can always make a second version with like a soundtrack that he can do, because he's like, well, May is really fast. I'm like, well, actually it's April 21st. So yes. But he listened to it, and then he watched it and he kept asking me like, who's your DP? And he's like, who ran your camera? And I was like, dude, it's all me. I just started as a comic book in my head and I made it into a movie with my iPad. It's the magic technology. So
yeah, it's interesting that you talk about things, objects, having these kind of powers to kind of transport you back to somewhere else. I think I had mentioned to you before during that call that there was some art exhibit that I had happened to see online that was about someone who's taking phones, not necessarily the pay phones, but phones in general, and putting them in closed places so people could call the dead, relatives, pets, whatever. This was a phone that was designed as out in the middle of a forest somewhere.
Oh, no. It's I thank them in my film. So I don't think we did talk about this.
Oh, we did. Okay.
It's the Cousin of Denma. So I learned Japanese of maybe 6 or 7 years ago. And when I met my Czech friend, I was there studying a type of Japanese puppetry. And but the first thing I did on that trip was that I went to this phone. And it's, at the time you couldn't get there very easily because the train had been destroyed by the tsunami. Okay. Like 10 years earlier, but they hadn't rebuilt it. Now it's back. Actually, someone just went, a friend of mine, I sent them there and they took some video for my film. Nice. But yeah, it's this, the man's, I believe his cousin, but his cousin died in the tsunami and he built this phone. And he built this little glass phone booth. It's so beautiful. It's in this tiny little garden in, like you said, in the middle of nowhere. And so he would just use it and he would call. And this is, I've had my phone booths as shrines obsession for ever since I was a kid. But when I heard about this place, I had to go to it because it was bringing those ideas together so much more solid. And basically he was using it to talk to his lost loved ones, and people in the area found out and they started coming and using this phone to call their lost loved ones, and more people started coming. And then I came and other people from around the world have shown up. And what I love about it is when you see the phone, it's, I think what I most did not expect, most unexpected, was the cable, the wire that would go into a wall is just there. It's wound up and it's just hanging there. And if I was designing this in my set design puppet magical world brain, I would have run that wire up to the top, or I would have run it into the ground. I would have given it the illusion of being connected to something. But in this place, it's not, and that's fine. He wasn't necessarily thinking of like design aesthetic. He was just doing something he needed to do. But it's so clearly disconnected. And yet people keep coming, and they are, what I think is so magical and so wonderful about it is that it's a piece of Bakelite. It's a plastic phone that is clearly not connected. And yet, why did you come here? Why did I fly across the world and then took 8 hours of local train to get to this place? And it's because it has weight, it has magic, even though it's just an object. I'm obsessed with that place.
It's such a beautiful thing. And it's interesting to note, which I did not know about, you educated me on this, that, he was just someone who needed something to help him connect, to grieve or whatever he needed to do. So it's not necessarily an artist trying to
No,
make
he's a
his
guy.
use.
Yeah.
He's just a normal guy, which to me is absolutely beautiful and
He
the
might
purest
do an
art.
artist, but yeah, they run this lovely garden.
Yeah.
And I will say other people have copied, and not copied in a bad way, not in like, no one's ripping anyone off.
Yeah.
Which is what I really like. I used to feel kind of uncomfortable, I guess. I felt, because I wanted to make one too, and in some ways I kind of just did, but mine isn't necessarily just for dead people. It's about connecting to anything.
Yeah.
But this is but yeah, there are more wind. Casino Denwa is the wind telephone, and there's more of them that are being built around because people need them, and I think that's amazing. There was even one before I left, or maybe after I left the US, someone built one in North Carolina, near Asheville, in a city called Marshall. And part of me was like, it's my artist, it's my soul is a bit split between cheap knockoff or, oh my gosh, it's beautiful. We're creating this like network of phones that are for imaginary connection. And that's so beautiful. Like, I really do have both feelings. And I want to lean into the latter, to like, this is beautiful. Someone's art that you never even went to visit moved you so much that you recreated it, because it is very beautiful.
It's interesting too, to me at least, that this idea of connection and not connection during the times that we live in now. I grew up in the late 70s, early 80s. So I remember a time where we still had regular phones at the home, and that's the only way you connect, besides friends that you had living around you and stuff like that. So there was a lot of not connecting. Now we have this Zoom that we're on now. We have our phones on us at all time. So just the act of having this physical object that is no longer used, that's not connected to anything, is interesting, beyond the idea of like, well, you can use this to connect to an imaginary friend or someone who's passed away or any of that. Just this idea of this object just sitting there that's not connected to anything.
Yeah. Yeah, it was like, even in building our phone, there was this, like, we had some issues with design, like how something would be shot. And also I was coming at it from a very, I know what the Southern Bell blue telephone booths, and you know them too. Like, we know what a public phone booth looks like in the US. That's not what they look like here. So my checks would come at it with what they remember telephone booths looking like. And sometimes, so we compromised, and also we compromised for how some things needed to be for shooting. In US, usually the telephone hangs up over the keypad, but then you can't show the keypad changing. You can't, but in Europe, the phone is on one side, the keypad is on the other side, and that's completely normal. But yes, the changing something, but trying to make it look realistic, I guess. Like I think when I first got them, the buttons we made are huge. They're like 2 centimeters by 2 centimeters. And I was like, these are comically oversized. They don't look real. And I want this thing to look and feel as real as possible, even though it's made out of wood. And over time, I accepted, and now the buttons look much more normal to me. But I wanted that abandoned object to give it life. I can't find. I would buy an old public telephone if I could find one, but I can't find them.
Right.
They're around, but I don't have $1,000.
Right.
I want one.
So this might be a little too personal, and don't answer if it's too personal, but considering that you flew to Japan, you did the 8 hours to get to that phone, what was the experience like? Were you able to lose yourself in the experience and actually have an experience with that phone? Or were you just too far removed from it? You're like, yeah, this is interesting. I'll put it by my head, but not really feeling they don't need to talk to anyone.
I was able to, so similar to my Czech, my Japanese is kind of hot garbage. Especially now because I haven't used it in years because of COVID. But I had functional, respectful, like formal Japanese. I didn't sound cool, but I did sound very respectful. And I went, I think I had time maybe to calm down, because to get there, I took a bus, and I don't usually take buses. I usually take trains, and the bus is old and in the middle of nowhere. So I had to ask some people, am I going to the right place? And I left very early, and the garden doesn't open until 10, and I got there at like 7:30 in the morning. So I just walked around this town that is still rebuilding from the tsunami, and many people have just left, and I was right on the beach. So I was just like walking along the water, and the whole place has kind of that heavy energy, I guess. And I was there for that purpose, so I was more tuned into it. But when I went, the place is so beautiful. It's so calm. And yeah, I had my like, I did go both with like, I'm going to geek out on a telephone and the significant object, but also like, I'm going to make a call for things for people that I've lost. And I did, and I felt dazed afterwards. It's just like all of this, and it was my second day, I think, in the country, second or third day. And I was wandering around, and this woman found me and asked me, because I don't look Japanese, and she asked me what I was doing there, or not like, what are you doing here, but just like, hello. I think she knows why people are here, because it's her phone. And I spoke to her a little bit, and I don't remember much of my Japanese, but I remember telling her like, yes, it's sad, but it's also so beautiful. And she's like, yes, it is. But we ended up talking for a really long time. She changed my name because my name is very difficult to say in Japanese, because the letters just aren't there. And so my name can be said Barari or Uareri. And she said, so she's looking at me and she says, okay, Rose-chan. And I was like, Rose, that's not one of the options. And it's because Barari can be shortened to Bara, and Bara is rose in Japanese. And she knew the word rose in English. So she's like, your name is Rose now. And I was like, I have never had a fondness for that flower until now. And we had tea together. And then I realized that she is like the wife or partner of the man who built the phone. And I was like, oh, I'm in your house. And they, so he came down and we were talking. He spoke Japanese, and she would translate for me only by simplifying whatever he said. So he would say something in Japanese, she would say it again in simpler Japanese, and I would usually understand. And I told them about the puppet workshop I was doing. So I have this wonderful photo of me and them with little like eyes drawn on my hand, because I didn't have my hand eyes, just being like, you can make a puppet like this. Absolutely incredible. There are days in my life before that and days after, and they are different. It is that whole trip, like, and then meeting my checks, and here I am. That trip was, wow, it was really crazy. But yeah, that place lives large in my memory, and I want to go back. And now it's easier to go back because the train is running. So
awesome. Well, I think that is a great place to end this. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for letting me geek out about telephone.
Thanks for Tim as well, who obviously had to leave early. I think he had a tech today, so I wasn't even expecting him today. I will say, for the people who are watching this later on,
people are watching this? Oh, geez.
Yeah. This is not just for me. That's why I'm recording it.
I actually, as I was recording, I was like, this is just audio, right? Like, But no,
Sorry.
that's fine. I'm just like putting my hair in. My cat is trying to climb me. Very good. This is my tiny life in the Czech Republic.
I
Hi,
love it, the
Atlanta.
fact
I
that-
miss you, Atlanta.
And you also mentioned the fact that all the puppeteers are wearing striped shirts, and of course, everyone can see
am
that you have a
too.
striped shirt on.
I know what's up. I know how to blend into my surroundings.
Right. So
Yeah,
I
really
will
do
say though,
care a lot.
for Tim's sake, that Push Push is in College Park, like he said, and they do things a little bit different than a lot of theaters here in town. So they don't hold auditions. What they do is when they start working on a project, they put an announcement out there to come and play, basically, which is basically reading through the script and literally getting on your feet and playing. And this is how the process kind of starts, and you go through it, and some people will fall off, and eventually a show will be made. So if that interests anyone who is watching this, definitely get on to their Facebook account or check out their website, whatever it is. Obviously, Valerie, I assume you have a website as well. Do you want to share any of that information?
I do. Do I have a website? I think I do. That's a statement. No, I have I am Valerie from Far Away on all the social media, which by that I mean Instagram, and I don't post very often. But I think ValerieFromFarAway.com is connected, like all good artists, to a website that's about 5 years out of date.
Okay.
And I'm on Patreon / Valerie from Far Away, which is where most of my stuff, and some of it's free. It's just, it works really nice as a blog. So there's cool stuff to see there, whether or not you're giving me money for it. And there's stuff about this project in there as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so much for your time, Valerie. I really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. And I'm so excited to see your piece. Can't wait.
I'm excited for it to exist. I'm excited to go to bed.
All right. All right.
All right. Thank you
Have a
so
good
much.
one.
I'll see you later. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.